Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? As you can see right here, we've got a comment today. Now, before I address this, let me just throw this out there that this is not a jab at the person who left the comment. I'm not reading anything into their intentions behind it. It's the internet. There are 100 different reasons why somebody could say something, and you can't glean intent without actually talking to somebody and understanding where they're coming from. Nevertheless, there's a take that was shared about the Mayflower, specifically about Dorothy Bradford, the wife of William Bradford, that I've seen pop up once or twice before. And in 3.5 years of having my main video up and having over 2,000 comments, I've heard some takes, we'll say. This one's come up once or twice, and I just want to nip it. And so here's a video that I can refer back to and just send to people. Dorothy Bradford, it's unclear whether her death was accidental or whether she jumped off of the Mayflower, but let's just say that the idea that she was done in by anybody on that ship, there's no evidence for that at all, to such an extent that it would just be a really pointless conspiracy theory to suggest that somebody offed her. Dorothy Bradford and William Bradford set out in the summer of 1620 on this voyage. William was one of the main leaders, one of the main figures in it, and Dorothy had her hesitations, and her doubts and fears only compounded as the ship sailed across the Atlantic for all of the reasons that anybody on board might have doubted it. They were supposed to set sail in early July. They were delayed with ship problems on their sister vessel, the Speedwell. They ended up leaving 2 months behind schedule. The weather was bad. They were averaging about 3 miles per hour across the Atlantic. At one point, the ship broke in the middle. It was just one trial of faith after another. To say nothing of whispers and, we'll say, persecutions from the non-believing sect of the Mayflower Pilgrims. Not all of them were there for religious reasons. Some of them were there for commercial. And so there were tensions between various cohorts of the factions among the passengers, to say nothing of the crew, some of whom were very open in their ridicule of the Mayflower passengers and their voyage and their purpose. Compounding the issue is the fact that William and Dorothy left a young son behind in England. I want to say he was about 3 years old. They decided to wait until they got established in the new world before introducing their son into it in what would otherwise be a hazardous environment. But Dorothy being a mother, this just added to her stresses, and things came to a head when the Mayflower finally showed up in Cape Cod, and they were looking for a place to weigh anchor, to establish where it was that they were going to stay long term. And William Bradford went with the expeditionary crew in the sloop that the Mayflower had aboard, a smaller boat that they put together and set in the water. And about a dozen men went around for a couple of days looking for a place that was worth their while to take the Mayflower into and to start offloading passengers. He was gone for several days. When he came back, the other pilgrims told him, Dorothy died while you were gone. She fell overboard. Caleb Johnson, in his book, mainly suggested that it was an accident. Philbrick, in his book about the Mayflower, and I can't remember what Rebecca Fraser's take was on this in her book, but Philbrick was the one who at least explored the idea that she might have done it intentionally instead of just being up on deck and lost her footing and was too close to the edge and so on and so forth. The suggestion, not the evidence, being that William made very little mention of her after the fact in his record of Plymouth or his personal journals, because being as pious and observant as these saints were, they would have regarded suicide as a very dire sin. And just saying that word, I probably screwed this video up for the algorithm. And that would then lead to the suggestion, the possibility that he resented and judged his late wife if he had any kind of conclusive theory that she had done this on purpose. But again, it's not conclusive to us 400 years later. All we know is that she died by falling overboard. Whether it was an accident or whether she did so deliberately is inconclusive. People can form their own impressions of that, but we don't have anything that can say it certainly one way or the other. But we can definitely say that she was not murdered by William Bradford, because he was out and about on an expeditionary job when it happened. It would be just as ludicrous to suggest that one of the other passengers decided to whack Dorothy Bradford, because there would be no sum in it. And if you were caught doing so, uh, I have little doubt in my mind that the punishment would then be execution. Although I imagine that that would be up to Captain Jones of the ship and not so much the passengers themselves. But that would be an entirely separate issue. The point is, if somebody's floating this idea out there on the internet that William Bradford killed his first wife, absolute insanity. He physically was not present, and one of the, the key things that prosecutors and detectives and all that look for in murder cases is motive, means, and opportunity. And even assuming that William Bradford had the motive, which there is absolutely no reason to assume as much, he did not have the means or the opportunity to do so because he was not present. He was not at the scene. This is, I mean, to say that it's in bad taste to suggest this would be putting it lightly. William Bradford did not off Dorothy Bradford. She fell overboard and drowned. How and why is basically known to her and God at this point. Anyway, I recommend Nathaniel Philbrick's book. I definitely recommend Caleb H. Johnson's book. And of course, my favorite book on this subject is by Rebecca Fraser. So that's it for now. I'm going to read a couple of other books, and I've got a Shogun update coming up for you next, but I figured I'd just tackle this now. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.